Welcome to the Alchemy of Ascension Summit. I'm your host, Waxela Sananda, and this is where we really learn to raise our frequency to connect more deeply with our higher selves, with your soulmate, and even with the divine. And today it's going to be a wonderful conversation with Allison Pelissier. But before we get into that conversation, please join me in a short alignment process so we can all get really centered and present and ready to receive whatever information is shared on this call. So start by closing your eyes and just tune into your breath, breathing deeply into your belly. And with every breath, relax. And bring your awareness into your heart center and the light within your heart. And breathing into your heart, feel that light in your heart growing out around your chest. And now tune in to the heart of the central sun far above your head. This is the heart light of the central sun, which holds the divine masculine energy. And breathe that heart light of the sun down into the top of your head, all the way to the bottom of your feet and the base of your spine. And then move that light into your chest, into your heart center, joining with the light from above. And now tune your awareness into the center of the earth, the heart of the Mother Earth. And this is the heart light of the divine feminine. And breathe that heart light of the divine mother up through the layers of the earth as if on roots, and feel that energy coming up into your body like liquid crystal plasma, moving up all the way to the top of your head, spreading into every cell. And then let that light join with the light from above and the light within your heart, creating a trinity portal of light within and around you. And now spread that light out to combine energy with every other person listening and watching at this time and across all time and space. And connect in with myself and with Allison, knowing that together we are a community of light, a community who is actively seeking to expand our spirituality together. And together, we all raise each other's frequency, and we no longer have to do this alone. And now open your eyes. Thank you so much for doing that with me. I always feel more centered after connecting in that way. And it is my pleasure today to introduce you to Allison Pelissier. Hello, Allison. Welcome.
Hi, Waxela. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. So Allison is many things. A few of those things that we can say are you are an energy worker, educator, space holder, a coach, and an intuitive. You have a master's degree in international education. Also certifications in yoga and meditation. Allison does Akashic coaching, cacao ceremonies, vortex energy healing. And the way that I know Allison is through a light machine called the Lucia #3. And it is a really amazing technology that I am a practitioner of. And Allison is the distributor in the United States for Lucia #3. And that is how we first got connected. So Allison, I know this is like a big story to begin with, but I would absolutely love it if you would share how did you go from pursuing your master's degree, which you got in education, international education? So how did you go from international education to becoming a Lucia Light practitioner and eventually the distributor in the United States?
Yeah, so it's a really beautiful journey and unexpected, as the spiritual callings often are. I was actually studying in the UK, International Education and Development. I've really been felt called my whole life to help the world expand, but I had a very different idea of how that worked initially. And in that program, actually, I learned a lot about how, development programs around the world supposedly go in and help, but actually it's a form of imperialism. We in America really have ideas about what works best for other cultures, but that's not necessarily the case. So I was confronted during that program in this kind of challenge where I felt that I don't know if this is the best way. Like, can you help somebody else by telling them things? Is that really the way? Or you want to more empower them to find their way themselves? And while I was kind of in this deep inquiry, I was in a really challenging period in my own life. My father had passed away recently, and we were super close. And there was it awoke a bunch of PTSD symptoms in me from things in my childhood that I had blocked out, which can happen after a death or some huge experience like that. So I was kind of living in this half-life. Anyone who has really experienced PTSD knows kind of what I'm talking about. It's like there's like a wall of glass between you and the world. And as much as you try to communicate and feel, like you just can't. You feel like you can't connect to anyone. And really, you're not in your body. And so I was kind of in this state and pondering if this was really the right direction for me in international education and development. And I was invited to an art gallery. And that really special day, I almost didn't go. I was pretty depressed, and it was really quite challenging to get out of the house. But, my guides, I didn't even know they were my guides at that point, were just like really pushing me like, okay, you have to go. I'm like, oh, I feel like I just have to go. I don't know why. So I ended up leaving my house and getting in the train and just making it last minute and catch up with my friends. And then before I knew it, I was in front of this lamp. And there's a lot of synchronicities for me personally with the name Lucia. But I, just sat in front of it without any expectations of what could happen. And when I closed my eyes, I went very deep. So I only did a couple demonstration sessions and one longer session, which is our typical first session for people. And in that experience, I went straight through what a lot of people see in the light, which is these colors and patterns and like beautiful colorscapes. And before I knew it, I was on a lake in a boat with my father, who had passed away. And, there was a sense of awe and wonder there. And it reminded me of some of my dreams and lucid dreaming and kind of these kinds of places, but I didn't know what it was. And it was just so beautiful. We had a chance to talk, and, he reminded me to be happy and like that we can move on. When you have such deep, trauma or experiences, part of your soul can kind of cling on to that. You can really like attach to like, I can't let you go. I can't move on. And I think a lot of people in grief have felt this process. And for me, I was able to release that. I was able to allow my father to go forward, and for me to reclaim my own soul shard that had been left in that process of just really holding on to this sadness. And so, other things happened. I was in a forest. I had just like a really kind of breakthrough experience with the Lucia. And when I came back at the end of the session, first of all, I was like, whoa, like there was something about the light that felt more real than this reality, which is a really interesting a feeling. And so I kind of came back here and I was like, what is going on? I was in a gallery in London. I couldn't talk to anyone. I just went running out into the rain. And I felt like I came back to myself. And it was a really huge experience for me because I, went from this place where I wasn't sleeping. I was depressed. I couldn't connect with anyone. That night after the first session, I slept through the night for the first time in like 6 to 8 months. I remember waking up and just being like, oh my gosh, it's morning. Like I did it. Like I slept. And it just continued from that. I really felt like I was back in myself. I was like, I'm a happy person. I forgot I'm a happy person. And I've always been a very happy person. And that period of time was very challenging for me because I felt like I couldn't connect with that kind of essence of myself any longer. And so it really brought me back to myself, and needless to say, it stuck with me. So, so over the next year or so, I kind of, which is kind of the case for a lot of people, actually, they try it and it takes a while if you feel really called to come around to working with it. But it took me a little while to really like sit with it, but it kept coming back to me in dreams and, you know, in so many different ways. And I realized that it really offered something super special for me, that instead of, you know, I could still help people, but actually help people in the sense that I was holding space for them to help themselves, which is really my philosophy. And, you know, the true energy healers will never claim that they healed you. It's merely that they are a channel to allow divine light to come through them. And you are the receptor. You are the one allowing that in. You are the one calling that. You are the one showing up for that experience. You are the one choosing to invest your time and energy in that. And in doing so, it's reclaiming of your own energy. And so I really moved from this understanding of kind of the more capitalistic world and how, you know, people should live their lives, and telling them that, to really helping them, you know, like hold space for them to believe in themselves and trust their own intuition and to trust their own, you know, ascension process, if you will.
Yeah, what a beautiful story. I love how, you know, it feels like your father just reached through that light and reached you from the other side and let you know it was all okay and that you could, you know, reclaim yourself. And that what a powerful experience. I know when I've had those types of mystical experiences, and like you said, it felt more real than this reality. It's because it's a higher dimensional experience, and there's actually more dimension of information coming to you in that experience. So because there's more information, more sensation, we have more feeling available in those higher dimensional experiences. They do feel more real. And when you come back, it feels like this is the dream and that was the real place, doesn't it? Yeah. And that's a really special thing to experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that that's available through a technology like the Lucia #3, where I know a lot of people have had those types of experiences with plant medicines and certain chemicals like DMT, but that it's actually available in natural ways as well. And even breath work, people will get there through, you know, through breathing and doing breathwork techniques. So there are a lot of ways that you can have a breakthrough experience like that aren't drugs. And I don't condone or discourage drugs. I'm just saying that there are other ways. So thank you for sharing that story. That was beautiful. Can you talk a little bit about the mechanics of the Lucia #3? Some people are probably thinking, what in the world is this machine that took you to the other side? And how is that possible? Where did it come from? And what is it?
Absolutely. So the Lucia #3 was developed about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, in Austria by Engelbert Winkler, who is a psychologist and psychiatrist, and Dirk Prockel, and who is a medical neurologist and psychiatrist as well. And when Engelbert was growing up as a child, he had a near-death experience. And I'm not sure if you've spoken with people about that much in these interviews, but, you know, near-death experiences can be really profound in the sense that you go beyond yourself and you go through the portal and you choose to come back. And in his experience, he realized there was nothing to be afraid of in terms of death, that, you know, our ultimate fear of dying or like leaving behind this reality was constricting us from really enjoying the present moment. So he started as a hypnotherapist, working with a solid light and really bringing that solid light to different people and, like, you know, inviting them to go into these places where they can imagine themselves in this space. And then entered Dirk Prockel, and he said, why don't you use flickering light? And as a neurologist, he understood that flickering light can help guide the brain waves into you know, different states. So you can kind of entrain the brain, which is kind of initially what happens with any outer source of, you know, binaural beats or flickering light or anything like that. And anytime you're exposed to something like that, then you start going to an entrainment. A lot of people have experience being on a train or in a car when you're a kid, and you're driving past all these trees and the light is flickering through, and this really beautiful dreamy state kind of starts opening up. And this is in essence the Lucia experience. It's just more put into technology and working with other, types of frequencies, so to say. But really the light has a central element of the central halogen bulb. And this is super important for the experience because it reminds you, in this beautiful meditation that you started with, the central sun, that heart space of the sun, that warmth, that is our home. There's something really like nurturing and feminine and just really like loving about that space that starts with this halogen. And actually a big part of it too is that there's infrared in a halogen light. And this infrared light, when it's coming in through your eyes and into your, your brain, into your, different parts of your body, it goes all the way through, like all of your cells actually communicate through light. And so opening this space with infrared can really allow just a deeper relaxation into the experience. And then the flickering light comes in, and the flickering light is the photic driver or the entrainment aspect. So as your brain starts realizing like, oh, hey, there's something else going on here, and starts to follow the flickering, that's when you start seeing these beautiful worlds of color and patterns and all of that. And they don't know exactly why you see what colors you do, and everyone has a very different experience in terms of light. Some people only see black and white, and some people go straight through the light like I did in my first experience and have like a breakthrough experience. But regardless of what happens in a Lucia session in terms of the kind of visual or experience on that level, what it's really doing is helping retrain your nervous system. So moving from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic. So a lot of times, most people in the United States and other kind of countries where we're really capitalist and really going for this action, money, drive, energy, it's like you wake up, you drink your coffee, you go to work, you're, go, go, go. And this is actually a stress state. And that's why people burn out and really have, get overly activated. And so what the Lucia is doing is helping us move from this state of stress into a state of peace. And so for people like me who are dealing with PTSD, it doesn't feel safe. There's something in your system that every time you try to go into that relaxation, you you can freak out. You kind of like, the way I see it actually energetically is that there's all these kind of different frequencies, and the light is like taking you down through different frequencies. And if you hit one that is not harmonious, say, to your system, because you've stored kind of a off-key frequency from a trauma, which is there to remind you of safety, right? But as you kind of go through that and you hit that, you get afraid, And so with the light, and it usually will wake you up, so people can't sleep, or they kind of go into altered states, they hear a loud noise, and it's suddenly like, oh, that could be it, it hits that frequency that's off-key. And that with the Lucia light, it's like really deeply relaxing you. So as you go through those, you can start softening and like actually really shifting how that energy is showing up in your field and how you're holding on to it. Some people who've had kind of PTSD experiences will see what actually happened to them from almost like an outside perspective. There's something so deeply relaxing about being in the light that you're not reliving an experience in the same way that you would in other kind of therapies for PTSD, but you're allowed to like be with it in a place where you feel really held and loved and see it from like a different perspective. And that way it's easier to integrate in your system. And so that's, and so the Lucia light, a lot of people say like, well, who's this for? Is it just for people with PTSD? And absolutely not. I mean, there's way different levels, right? So there's kind of some of the breakthrough experiences happen from people who are really in a dark place, so to say, dark night of the soul, really, like I was really struggling with this deeper reality or acceptance of something that had happened in my life. For other people, it's about ascension, right? It meets you where you're at. Because it's just light as well, you're not taking anything outside of yourself. There's nothing there. There's no forcing, there's no controlling, there's no manipulation of your hormones in that sense. It's literally just welcoming the light in. And so it really depends on where you're at and how much you welcome the light in and what exactly you need in that moment. And sometimes that's just relaxation. Sometimes that's shifting your nervous system from that go, go, go into that peace and quiet, because most of, the most beautiful manifestations and creations that we can call in this world are not from that go, go, go place, but they're actually from that quiet presence. Like when we open, when you open space in the beginning of this call, it's not to just dive into super hyper intellectual talk that's not embodied. It's about embodying this frequency and realizing as we embody this frequency, we can rise from that space. And that's what the Lucia really meets you with and invites you to work with her in that way.
Yes, thank you for that explanation. You do that much better than I could. And I know you've immersed yourself in the culture and the understanding of the brain, and how it interacts with the Lucia light. And there's a term, it's hypnagogia, right? Or hypnagogia. Is
Yeah,
that
hypnagogia. Mm-hmm.
hypnagogia? And tell us about that. And that is like the state that we get into with the Lucia light.
Yeah, so as your nervous system starts relaxing, you can get into this like hypnagogic state, which is really the beautiful state between being awake and being asleep. And it's very interesting because, there's a lot of accounts about stories of hypnagogia from like way back. And a lot of people, like in the 1920s or something, were writing stories about it, and they see these bizarre things. And so there's almost like an element where sometimes you can see really random things. It's like kind of reprocessing your brain. It's like as you relax just before you sleep, it holds you in that place. And sometimes it's kind of begins with like almost random kind of feeling, but then as you kind of go deeper into it, because you're still conscious, that's the thing. It's like with a plant medicine or something like that, you're in an altered state, like for sure. There's no way you can like rationally think a normal way. Whereas with the Lucia light, you're there. You are there the whole time. Your rational state, you're not out of your control zone. You can stop the light at any time. It's actually an invitation to be fully present and clear and not be on any kind of altered state, but to drop into and naturally create a deep relaxation right before sleep, which is this beautiful space. And so you can go from kind of the randomness into like really beautiful experiences, and that's a lot of the magic of it. And so for a lot of people, it's actually like a wave. So they start deeply relaxing and they get very close to sleep, and you might even hear yourself snore. It's very funny. Like sometimes people like, because it's like you're so relaxed. Your body is so relaxed. Your body thinks it's sleeping. It's kind of like your body is sleeping, but your brain is still present and awake. And so then you kind of hit that place, and then you say, oh, I'm in this light thing. And you kind of come back. And it's like these waves of getting really deep and close to falling asleep without falling asleep is what really like deeply relaxes your nervous system. And that's also a really special place for creativity, for, openness, for finding new neural pathways, just like seeing that, your life can be more than you thought. Because as you get out of your default mode network, which is your usual way of thinking, like the patterning of thinking, like, okay, if this happens, then I do that. This is how I respond to that. We have these really set ways that our ego creates, and they're to like protect us, right? It's like, okay, well, I know when I get up, I'm going to brush my teeth because that's what I do, and that's, a great thing. So you don't need to like lose that all of the time, but by like softening that a little bit in the experience, you could say, actually, you know what, like flossing is really good too, or like you can change your habits. It's kind of a mundane topic there, but it's like, or you could just see something about yourself, or like the way that you had judge somebody else, or like judge yourself, or held something against yourself or someone else. And it provides a softening. It's like, maybe I don't need to hold on to that anymore. Maybe that isn't actually how I feel, and I can allow that to go. And in this like softened kind of hypnagogic space, there is an opening for that. And it really takes you out of your world, out of this default mode network of your way of being, while still being very conscious and present. So that when you come back after the experience, there's this choice. It's like, okay, it's like a reset, it's like a massage for your brain and for your whole energetic system that's very clearing, and like allowing all these things to like release from you that are not you. And then you have a choice to choose you. And yeah, of course, you can choose the same old patterns that no longer serve you, or you can choose something different. And, a lot of, deep meditators, people who have been meditating for a long time, can get to very similar states where, you know, when they come back from a meditation, it's like a refresh, you know, and they're very present. For a lot of people, like getting to that kind of, you know, state just through meditation on their own can be really challenging. And so the Lucia can really be great in that sense to help you and guide you into that state. And I've had people experience the light who say even just after, you know, one experience, they, you know, the light is kind of guiding you into that state, and you can understand what it feels like to be in that place for the first time. And then when you go back to that, it's like, oh, you know, like I'm sitting by myself, oh yeah, like I'm seeing colors, and like really you can feel that your frequency is moving into that space. It's kind of guiding you in that way. And then for people who are more advanced on their path, it's really allowing you to go to the next level. You know, like Einstein used to do this thing where he would hypnagogia to get great new ideas, right? He needed a breakthrough. He was working on this problem for so long and he couldn't find an answer. And he would sit and like hold his hand out with a spoon in it and just like relax, 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 relax until he dropped the spoon, and then it would hit a plate and it would wake him up, and then he would have these amazing ideas, because just before he fell asleep, when he got into that hypnagogic state, that's when this creativity, because again, you don't have these old patterns that are constricting you into like, no, this is the only way to do it. It's like the whole experiment with asking a 4-year-old what you can do with a paperclip versus asking, you know, someone in their 50s. It's like a totally different thing. Most 4-year-olds are like, oh, look, it could be this, it could do that, it could do that. Like the creativity is this wide open. As we get older, it's like, oh, that's a paperclip. This is what you do with it, you know, and you know, use it for putting papers together. Like, what else? What would you do with it? You know, so it's like our society and everything, which is again part of our, you know, well-being, and it serves us in so many ways. But it has kind of constricted what's possible for us in our reality. And the Lucia opens that space again and said, hey, guess what? There's so much more, and you can access that.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. And it's also that hypnagogic state is hypnosis, the state of hypnosis as well. I've been hypnotized several times. And like you said, you know, there's always a part of your mind that's aware and watching. It's almost like the observer. It's like, hey, what's happening here? So you kind of just put that part to the side and have your experience and go with it. And then the more you can surrender into the experience, the more it opens up. Yeah, and I want to kind of like dive into the conversation about some of these special experiences. I know you've experienced a lot of them. I've also, as a practitioner, experienced some things. And you would think, I mean, there's no, like you said, you had that breakthrough experience on your very first time, you know, trying the Lucia light in a very short session. And that's unusual, you know, but it does happen. I had a woman, and this is in my first year of being a practitioner. I was doing a lot of, I would go to a location and see people one after another. So just short 15-minute sample sessions. And normally people are like, oh, wow, I love the colors and I feel so groovy and whatever, you know, in a 15-minute session, that's not very long. And I had a woman come in who, she was just accompanying a friend. She wasn't even there for it. Her friend came to do the light, but she decided to do it because she was with her friend. And she ended up in the first, I think in the first 2 minutes, certainly less than 5 minutes in, her eyes came open. She had really beautiful light blue eyes, and tears were streaming down her face. And I could tell something really big was happening to her, but I didn't want her eyes to be hurt, because your eyes are supposed to be closed. And it doesn't hurt your eyes, but you are supposed to have your eyes closed in a light journey. So I stopped the light and checked in with her. I'm like, are you okay? And she just nodded like, yes. And I said, do you want to continue? And she nodded yes. And so I said, please close your eyes. And she did. And then I started the light up again. And within a minute, again, her eyes popped open and tears were flooding down. And I knew that she was not seeing the light. She was seeing something completely different than that. And I gave her the 15 minutes. And then fortunately, she had a friend with her, because this is a situation where I, as a practitioner, I would want to stay and help unpack that experience. She had a very deep experience where she had lost to her twins in a car accident many, many years before. And the twins that she lost as infants came to her in the light and told her they were okay. She got closure with them. She got to see them. She got to experience them. And she got to release grief and guilt. And it was very, very powerful for her. And I know it was a long process to unfold. I had some conversations with her after that, but she had her friend also helping her. And that's one of those, like, you just never know what's going to come up. But if you've been holding, like you were in grief and she was in grief, and I see that with people that have lost someone important to them or experienced a loss that deep, a lot of times the light will just, it's like the light pours in and bubbles up, and that it just comes out. And that's a beautiful thing, and something to be aware of. If you're holding a lot in, be ready to go into a release, a possibility of release anyway, because that is one of the beautiful gifts of the Lucia light. I'd love to hear one or more of your stories of people having breakthroughs or healing experiences in the light.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I've been working with this light for about 6 years now. So I've seen all kinds of different experiences. And, over the years, one that's standing out to me recently was that I was offering some sessions in a studio, and one woman, again, it's like kind of came in with nothing. So I'll preface this story by saying really quickly that, expectation can really get in the way. Sometimes if we come in and we're like, I want this from the light, it's like, it won't give it to you. And that's what you said, with like, the first one is kind of, it doesn't happen all the time. I do recommend that if people are working with something really deep, to do a series of sessions, at least 6 sessions, because that's when you're really shifting. And as you get used to the space, you can go deeper, because when you kind of hold an expectation that this is going to happen, then sometimes you can block yourself, and again, it's not a psychedelic drug or something kind of outside of yourself. It's you. So if you put up your own internal wall because your ego is like, I'm not ready for that. And I know that could be a possibility that could actually block your experience. And so it's not like it can't happen, but it's more like you need to kind of be a little more patient with it and open. And so anyway, but I was giving some sessions recently, and a woman came in, and she didn't really know about it, but she just felt really called to come in and do a session. And in the experience, everything was kind of going well for her in her life for the most part, but this was right after the new year, and she really wanted to kind of go deep into starting fresh in the new year and like letting go this past decade and just clearing out. And in the experience, she was crying, and I was holding space. And sometimes I get like intuitive downloads for people, or I feel like I'm part of their experience in some way, just watching, kind of seeing what's going on for them. But the role of like holding space is just really holding space. So you're not in it with them, but you're kind of, really there for them and creating that safe container for them to drop in. And so I could tell, that it was really deep. And at the end of the session, she had cried a little bit, and she was still kind of in this very sensitive place. And she said, everyone should try that before they die. And I said, oh yeah, like tell me more. And she said, I couldn't believe it. And she had a full life review. So she didn't even know actually that it came from, the research on near-death experiences and trying to kind of emulate that. She had no idea. And she just went through a full life review. So she went to every significant person in her life came up to her, and she saw the memory of being with them. And she saw, even like she said, this creek by her house that she used to go to when she was little, and all the stones were exactly in the same place. And she had like the full visceral feeling, and it continued all the way to her life, to the present moment. And then what was really amazing was she saw on her deathbed, she saw herself in the future laying there, and she had all of her family around her, and her children, it gives me chills even talking about it. It's like her children, who were like 6 and 8 right now, or around that age, younger, they were grown up and they had children. And she was laying and surrounded by family, and she felt this deep peace.
Mm.
And she was, you know, very emotional afterwards. And she was like, I'm not sad though. I'm not sad. She kept saying like, I'm really not sad. It's just like, it's so deep, you know? And that's kind of the thing too. It's like, sometimes I think we think that, you know, if you feel like crying or laughing or something, it's because it's funny or sad. And it's like, this is an energetic movement. You know, this is the feelings that we have and like the depths that we can feel and go for are part of who we are. And the light can kind of open that space for you to really feel that depth that's you, you know. And it's not a bad thing to cry or to laugh, because it's expressing this depth that there's kind of no words for or no way to explain in some ways. And she just kind of really summarized by saying that she just felt very, you know, inspired and like understood things on a really deeper level, and trusted herself and trusted her life and her path in a much deeper way. And, you know, to take more time for herself and to like slow things down a little bit and just be more present with everything. And you know, there was still a lot of processing that she needed to do and all of that, but it was a really deep and magical experience.
Mm.
um, yeah. And
Oh.
other people, you know, like we've had, I remember I was giving a group session, and, you know, this theme again of people who have passed away coming back. There was a group, and one guy, I was just like, whoa, something's happening over here. I could just tell that he was getting very activated by the light. And so I actually went over and covered his eyes, because I could just feel like he didn't need this like intensity of the light, because his body was kind of moving a little bit. And I was like, okay, there's something big happening here. I didn't want to stop the whole experience because I didn't want to stop him from doing it. But I kind of just covered his eyes because I knew that. And, you know, he didn't react at all because he was really deep in memory.
Mm.
And in the experience he saw his grandmother had passed away recently. And as soon as he went, and he had been kind of holding, you know, this pain in his heart. And as the light kind of came in, as you beautifully said, to like bring light to that space and kind of bubble out whatever is being held there, he said the smells were so amazing for him. He was in his grandmother's kitchen, and she used to always cook for him. And she made him this like, you know, amazing meal. And she was just talking to him while she was cooking, and he was sitting in her chair, and he's like, and she said to him like, this will always be here, you know, like I'll always, like, you can always come back to this place. And it
Mm.
was like, so instead of like a soul shard that's like lost, it was actually like a safe space, you know. And for a lot of people in meditation, it's like you kind of know you can go to your safe place, you know, and like start a meditation from that space. And, you know, that could be like a really beautiful spot in nature, or it could be your grandmother's kitchen. And, you know, everyone has a really different way of finding that. But it was like when he came back, he really said like, wow, that was like so powerful. And he really, you know, didn't expect that from the light, but he was just like amazed that, you know, he could tune in on that level, and he felt like more connected to her than ever. And that's, you know, kind of a reminder. And how I felt with my father and the light too is just that, you know, when people pass, there's a sense that we've lost them, but actually they're with us more than ever. You know, they become our guides. They become people that can become an energy that's in our field, because we're now passing on that love that they shared.
Mm.
And yeah, he had a really deep experience. And there's been so many. I mean, people have, you know, even just seen nature and been in touch with nature, been underwater and experienced these things. They've seen sparkling cities of light like Atlantis. They've, you know, one woman recently like birthed an alien baby like in the
Oh.
experience. And then she, you know, realized it was, you know, a project that she was working on.
Mm.
So sometimes it's not, sometimes it can be metaphorical as well. People have seen symbols or deeper, you know, connection with their family lineage, or like healing of major, you know, things, or also just getting incredibly clear, you know, creative ideas about, you know, they've been working on a project for a long time and then just have a huge breakthrough around that. And I think like these type of experiences, it's again really like what your soul needs at that moment, and like what you're really calling in to tune into. And when you're real with yourself in terms of like what that actually is, you can go really far. And again, sometimes that means you have to relax first. You know, sometimes we can't manifest
Yeah.
all our magic from this, you know, anxious place. We got to first raise up to the frequency to like be a match for what we're calling in. But
Mhm.
the light can really help you with that. And then from there, in the light experience, it's up to you. Everyone is completely different, and every time you know, is magical, and every time is different. And, like I've worked with the light for, like I said, 6 years, and there's something about the light that just makes me so happy every time I'm about to do it, because I have no idea what it's gonna be. Like, I've been doing this for 6 years, and I'm like, okay, like show me what's going on. And and it's a really deep reflection of who you are, and so you can see it as a tool that's like, okay, it can really help you shift into these amazing states. You can have these breakthrough experiences where you deeply process something, or you tune in with a guide that you've never seen before, or you go into an astral space where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in a lucid dream, I can do whatever I want, or it can be something where you just literally, like, come back to yourself, and realize that are so present. I've had people having like some of the, like these non-duality experiences with it as well, which is kind of on the other spectrum in terms of, it's not a story anymore. There's no more story to release, but it's literally just coming into the deepest presence where, they say they just disappeared into the light. Like, you start with the light, you're watching it, and then it comes in, and then you are the light, and then the light is like coming out of you, and you feel like you're just sending that light to the whole world. And that's so powerful as well, because sometimes we think like, oh, I need another story, I need to process something, there's something wrong with me, there's this, there's that. And it's like, hey, if you've been doing this work for a while, like, guess what? There's a bigger reason to like send our energy to. It's like for healing the planet and connecting with all that is. And, doing the self work definitely helps, because your frequency here is super important, or you wouldn't be here. And you raising your own frequency helps connect with other people. But really also realizing that when you can embody that light, when you can be so full that the light is just pouring out of you in the session, and you're reminded of that cup fullness, you're just overflowing in your life afterwards. I mean, that is pretty amazing as well.
That is really amazing. And what a beautiful image, just, sending that light out. And I do want to speak into that, people that are deep meditators, that have done a lot of work, oftentimes do get to those places. It's not that you have to be a 20-year meditator to get there at all, and actually for some people, the Lucia light can kind of be a fast track for that, or help them excavate some of that, old baggage and trauma so that you can get there faster. But I wanted to talk about an experience that one of my clients and a friend had. She's someone that has been meditating. She does breath work. She's a breath work teacher. She did, I think it was her 11th journey with me as a practitioner when this happened. So it wasn't her first time. And her intention was to go as deep as possible. Kind of like what you're saying. She just wanted, like, I want it all. I want to surrender fully and see what happens. And I just want it all. And, obviously she's doing the work to back that up. That's not something that someone who's never meditated is usually going to get, although, it could happen. But she called it a near-death experience. I don't know if that is the appropriate terminology, but she actually did get to God, or that oneness experience, singularity, whatever you want to call it. She got to experience being one with everything, and that it was just all love. And it was, she couldn't even talk about it. She didn't talk about it for a while. She did a video about it quite a while later. But she really, really went deep. And as a practitioner, and it was a group experience, so some of the people in the group were new, and I think one person had done it like 3 times, but she was like, so the new people were looking at her like, is she okay? Because she didn't even come back right away. It took a while for her to recover. And this is one of the reasons why I stopped doing the short sessions. I don't do 15 or 20-minute sessions anymore for people, because I find that sometimes people need time to get back, and they need, a safe space, and they need a practitioner that's there for them, that's going to hold space and continue to hold space as long as they need it, not like, okay, next, So, and I'm not saying anything is wrong with doing it that way. Just for me personally, I don't like cycling people through without having time to integrate. So I stopped doing it that way. But she, that was for her like the same as a near-death experience, where she went to the light and got that oneness and got to experience God. And that's the power that's available. I mean, it's just amazing what people can get from it. And I myself, I've had a lot of really interesting experiences as well. One time I popped out in a different reality, totally different reality. I was in totally different type of body, different density, different atmosphere, everything. And I was, I had that experience. And I wrote about it afterward. It was really amazing. Yeah, and people have had healing experiences. The Lucia light is not a medical device, but I've had people heal grief, heal pain, and it's really, it's not, the light is not doing the healing. The light is bringing light in so that you can have a space to heal in, and holding space, like you said, is such an important part of it. I have had more than one person that has become a practitioner or purchased their own light, because you can also get a home version of it if you don't want to be a practitioner, but you want to have a light at home. But once they got that light, going from being a client of mine to having the light, and I know you've had this experience too, they'll go home and use it and say, why don't I get to the same place as I do when I come to you? And it's really about like, okay, set your space up, make it a ritual. Make sure your phone's off, nobody's coming to the door, light a candle or whatever. Make yourself a very safe space and a container to hold your journey in, because you're holding it for yourself and not having someone from the outside hold that space for you. And that part's very important. Just like on a medicine journey, you want to have a shaman there to guide you, or you're just kind of on your own. And if you are on your own, you want to set your space up right to be able to be safe and go deep.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really important point. And, that's kind of the whole thing. If you feel called to work with this or feel called to experience it for yourself, it's taking it as something sacred,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important, because when you make that intention on the deeper way, it's not like I have the intention to have an astral trip and go to a different world. It's like the intention is that this is something sacred, and that my intention is to go deep and see that mystery. That's a really important and beautiful part of the experience. And we can change so much even in our meditation. If you just sit for a meditation and you're like, okay, I'm just going to do this like quick, I'm drinking my coffee, or if you just say like, okay, yeah, you're not going to go anywhere, you're just going to be thinking the whole time, but if you're like, okay, I'm taking this moment, sitting with a crystal, even if you can't feel a crystal, even if it's just like a metaphorical thing for you there, or if you can tune into it, whatever, light a candle, or, do something intentionally in this 3D reality to anchor that energy. That
Mm-hmm.
intention goes so far, and
Yeah.
that's the other thing is like with psychedelics and everything becoming more popular, it's like a reminder that like this can be so healing, or it can be totally the wrong way with those kind of things if we're not holding the right intention and creating a sacred space and honoring the depth of these experiences of what's possible. And the same as with the Lucia. There's different practitioners, and depending on who you work with and what kind of space they're holding and what intention they're bringing to their practice, you can have a very different experience.
Yeah, very true. And I've heard that from people that have come, who have been to different practitioners, like, oh, it's different every time, and like with any journey, set and setting is always important. So for anyone that wants to go try a Lucia Light session, I highly encourage you to try it. Find a practitioner. If there isn't one near you, a lot of them do travel. But just make sure you have a conversation first, or that you're comfortable with that person and the space that they create. And yeah, and give it a try, and surrender and just allow and see what happens. But the important thing, like Allison said, is don't go with preconceived ideas of that you're going to have a breakthrough in some way, because it's best to just go and experience what you experience and know that whatever it is perfect for you, even if it's not, the deepest emotionally and mentally, that's okay. It's still an experience and it's perfect, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we are getting to the end of our hour, and I want to make sure that I tell everyone about your offers. So, Allison has an ebook called Awakening Technologies that she's offering everyone for free. And so, if you're into the world of ascension, raising your frequency, and you like tools such as the Lucia Light, that's what this book is about, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what it is?
Yeah, it's a short ebook. The idea is that, it's touching on a few different technologies. So since I'm a distributor of the Lucia Light, I get to travel all over, and I've gotten to experience all kinds of different technologies. And so this is kind of a culmination of a few of the technologies that I think are the most powerful, with an idea that you can kind of see which one calls to you to try them as an experience or to work with it deeper yourself. And as well, there's, a couple technologies in there that are not actual technologies, but are, for example, your own breath, and some,
Mhm.
recommendations of different ways you can work with your breath as a technology to help you get to different states.
Wonderful. Yeah, and when you pair the breath with the Lucia light, that can get even deeper and more, open up more.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then also you have a $97 offer, which is a 30-minute intuitive session with Allison. And this is a really powerful thing to get to spend that one-on-one time with Allison. Do you want to say a little bit about what happens in a session with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been very intuitive since I was quite young. And then recently, in the past few years, it's gotten, stronger and stronger. And again, it's really just opening a place where I can share a reflection of what's coming up within your Akashic Records. So Akashic Records are this very beautiful multidimensional library space where all of time and everything is recorded. And these are, the best way to work with this type of coaching call is to kind of think about, what are, things that are holding you back, or what kind of situations. And usually what it is that, on a deeper level, it can just be really powerful to hear that reflection from somebody else. So it could be a reminder, or it could even just be questions that come up within that space that are pertinent to you, that will help you explore a deeper level of what's going on there.
Beautiful. Thank you for offering those things. And I know you have such a big heart, and you are so feeling and so generous with who you are and the being that you are and what you share. I absolutely love, all of the time that we've been able to do things together, events and retreats and things. So it's such a blessing to know you. And I know you are very intuitive. So I think, if this calls to anybody, take her up on that. That'll be a powerful session. And so to end, I do want to, before we go, just talk about retreats. You do retreats in a lot of different places, and we actually have a retreat coming up on Amelia Island the end of the month. It's February 29th through March 2nd. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this retreat kind of um, integrates both ancient technologies and like futuristic technologies. So it's really working with everything from qigong in the mornings on the beach. And the beach to me is like an ancient technology. I mean, just being around the waves and the
Mhm.
ions and the amazing feeling of the ocean, and then doing qigong on the there is super powerful. And Dr. Nancy Hole is an amazing facilitator with tons of experience. And she is going to bring some really epic sessions that way. And then we'll also have intro with Waxela about Ascension and kind of deepening into that space. We're going to have meditations. We're going to have artistic expression. And then as well, group session with the Lucia Light, cacao ceremony, and
Breath
even
work.
more. Yes, breath work with
Breath work.
Waxela as well. And the breath work is super powerful for moving energy. So kind of the idea of the retreat is to come in and really do a deep refresh. It's like, okay, if you could go body, mind, and spirit for a few days and just go all in with really other high vibe, beautiful beings, and just really immerse yourself into that, you're going to come out a new person.
Yeah, and this location is really gorgeous, Amelia Island, Florida. We were there not too long ago, a couple months ago, and it was full moon, and we got to go out and be on the ocean under the full moon. It was just beautiful and amazing, and so like you said, refreshing. And so if that calls to you, contact us about that. Anything that you found interesting, I would love to hear about by responding to the email today that you received this in. So there was something about the light or just an aha moment or anything that was interesting or impactful to you, or if you want to know more about owning your own Lucia light or becoming a practitioner or having a practitioner visit you, please reach out and we'll get you some information on that. So that is the end of our time. Thank you so much, Allison. I appreciate you and everything that you shared with us today. You're such an awesome energy. I always love being in your presence.
Thank you, Waxela. Thank you for hosting me, and thank you for this beautiful summit offering so much magic.
My pleasure. Namaste, everybody. Thank you all for being here.